Well, good morning. Jim Sunderwirth from the swing here again this morning. So good to be with you. Yesterday we were talking about that first plague. And it was the plague that turned the Nile River, the sustainer of life for the Egyptians. They brought fish, they brought water, they brought everything. And it was a god to them. And basically it was the God of gods to them. So the sustainer of life to them became that which was sickening. They couldn't. Have you ever wanted something so bad and you worked yourself silly for it and you got it and it turned. I mean, I heard of a guy that he wanted a Mercedes so bad he went and bought a Mercedes on time, made payments, and after the first year, that thing was no sustainer of life, and he had to make the payments for the next 6-7 years. It turned on him. Well, that's what happens here. God will take away the sustainers of life, what gives us purpose sometime, and turns it in like it did to the river, turned into blood. They couldn't even. It stunk. Fish died. A whole works. Now they come to the second plague. The other day I was over at a house and I was lifting some boards and I was lifting up real hard and I came down and I looked down and oh my goodness, there was the biggest old frog you ever saw in your life, and that board came down and just missed him. And I thought to myself, if that board would have hit him, that would have split. He was so big and fat, the hook toad. And I said, oh, wouldn't it have been awful? Look, here we go. It's a crazy thing. The second plague. It's found in chapter 8. And the Lord spoke to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus saith the Lord, let my people go. There's a warning, let him go. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite your territory with frogs. I mean, I tell you what, around here where we live, there's a lot of frogs. There's a lot of toads. I live on the water here. There's a lot of frogs, a lot of toads, and I'm telling you what, there's nothing slimier. Sometimes you come home and they're on the door and they change color. It would be awful. Just think, the next day, frogs came out of that river so hard. When Moses put that staff down and those frogs started coming out, they said they were frogs. Just think, if you'd wake up in the morning and they were you'd open up a cupboard and there's nothing but massive frogs. You would open up your oven, masses of frogs. You'd pull back your bed, and in the bed there's nothing but frogs, and you just slimy frogs everywhere. You just cannot even imagine. You get in your chariot and you can't even slip. You step on a frog and you slip and fall out. Why? Because there's frogs everywhere. And then when you land on frogs. Frogs are everywhere. Now here's the thing about the frogs. The frogs, they were gods. They were a god. There was a goddess of frogs. Did you know that in Egypt, that it was a crime to kill a frog? And if you stepped on a frog and you killed one, you could be killed for it. It was a law. You could not kill a frog. God said, you think goddess frogs? You think it's a god? I'm going to tell you, you like frogs? I'm going to give you a bunch of them, and you're going to know that frog can't do one thing for you but make you sick. And sure enough, there were frogs everywhere, and it was crazy. Brought frogs. They came from everywhere. They were in the bedrooms. They were in the bathrooms. They were everywhere. Pharaoh looked at him and said, you got to do something about this. And Moses said, well, what do you want? When? And it's in the Bible. It says, when do you want me to take off these frogs? When do you want me to get rid of them? He said, tomorrow. Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Man, if I was living in frogs like that, I wouldn't have said tomorrow. I'd say, take them away right now. Do not procrastinate. I used to travel all the time and sing, and I had big songs. How big is God? And all these beautiful songs. He is my strength, and all these beautiful songs. But there was one song that I requested everywhere I went. They wanted to hear it one more time. You know what it was? The frog song. Well, Pharaoh had the children of Israel, and they were out there making bricks. And who'd come wandering in but Moses back from the sticks? He said, let my people be freed. And Pharaoh said, you think we're dogs? Moses said, you better let them go or I'll cover your land with frogs. Well, Pharaoh laughed and went to bed that night just to sleep and dream. He woke up the next morning and, the whole room was jumping green. Frogs were everywhere, both in the house and out. And when Moses said, Pharaoh, when shall we leave? Pharaoh began to shout. You know what he said? Give me one more night. Give me one more night. Give me one more night with the frogs. Tomorrow is the day that you can take these things away. Give me one more night with the frogs. You better come back tomorrow, and I'm going to finish that song. I bet you come back.